Hi, this is James Shrug with Westpac London's end of day report for Thursday the 3rd of May. Look, sentiment in equity markets a little bit negative today, driven mainly by softer US economic data. There was a mix of data actually out of the US, but the overall bias was probably to the downside. And also disappointment that the European Central Bank, whilst acknowledging that there had been somewhat of a deterioration in the economic outlook, the ECB nevertheless, or the ECB Council nevertheless said that they didn't discuss cutting interest rates at this month's meeting. You can actually see, if you look at the intraday movements in the stock market, you can see the sharp fall in European equities when President Draghi made that comment in the press conference. So I'll just run through the main data of the day. In the UK, we saw a softer services PMI. That was actually replicated in the US as well, where the ISM non-manufacturing index fell from 56 to 53.5. That was weaker than even Westpac's bottom of the market range 54 forecast, and is another piece of evidence that the US economy has lost some momentum heading into the second quarter. In contrast, weekly jobless claims fell quite sharply from I think it was 392,000 down to 365,000. That's a drop of 27,000 in the latest week. Now that's gone some way towards unwinding pessimism related to that indicator. It had been running above 380,000 for 3 weeks or so. Some analysts are now saying that it could be related to an Easter distortion, and that we're back to a more typical level for that particular measure of the labour market. We have to see next week if there's a bounce or not. If it holds at that lower level, it probably was just a bit of an aberration rather than a genuine deterioration in the claim story coming through. So that's something to watch for. But it wasn't enough to offset the negative sentiment, as I say, from the ISM survey. There were other pieces of data here and there, but they were the main drivers of the markets today. What we saw in Europe was the FTSE in London up 0.2%, the French market down 0.1%, the German market down 0.25%, the Spanish market down 0.3, so up 0.3, but the Italian market down 0.7% today. And at the US lunchtime, the Dow is at 13,237. That's down about 0.25% at the moment. Just on the ECB too, before I move on, they did acknowledge recent weaker data flow. They said that events and data in April hadn't been enough to materially change their view, but in their statement they did drop a couple of references to upside risks to inflation, and Draghi explained that basically they're now looking for the economy to begin to recover in the second half of 2012 rather than all the way through this current year. Of course, you haven't actually got any economic growth figures at all for the Euroland aggregate yet. We get the first quarter figures on the 15th of May. Our view at Westpac is that they will show a further modest contraction. Draghi seems to probably agree with that now, and their view then is that there will be possibly another decline in the second quarter figures, and then a bit of a bounce in the second half of this year. Our view at Westpac is that we won't see that bounce in the second half of the year, and that's why we've got a much weaker 1% or minus 1% forecast for European GDP growth this year than has the ECB. Their current forecast, or midpoint of their forecast range, is minus 0.1%, although we think they'll revise that lower when they review their quarterly forecasts next month. Okay, so commodity markets today. We're looking at oil off 2.3%. It's $102.80 a barrel. Copper prices down 1.25%, and gold prices down 1.1% today. We're looking at $1,636 an ounce. Aussie dollar, it's been drifting lower. It's at 1.0263 at the moment. A combination of the RBA rate cut earlier this week, some softer data, including a softer services sector survey released yesterday. Have certainly been factors at play, as well as the negative commodity market sentiment and equity sentiment today. Reserve Bank of Australia releases the monetary policy statement Friday, Sydney time, so that's the next big event to watch for in that part of the world. Okay, I'll leave it there for now. Back tomorrow.